Alphabet Man, tearing down the strongholds, exposing the darkness, wrecking the enemy's plans. Endurance till the end. It's time for the Alphabet Man Live.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. What a day I had yesterday. It was a busy day. I got up, I went to the Ministry Center, Wisconsin Christian News. I did my show. While we were there, more people came in. We were able to fellowship, and there's nothing like sitting around and just giving God glory through fellowship and intimacy with your brothers and sisters. And so during that time, one of our brothers has a truck that has signs all over it, anti-abortion, pro-life signs. And the hotel that many of us were in, he went to check in the day before and they didn't have a room available. So they let him reserve one to check in yesterday. But he said, could he stay in his truck in the parking lot? And they said, yeah, no problem. So he did. Well, they probably wouldn't have said, yeah, no problem, had they known what was the signs all over his truck. But so when he went to check in yesterday, the hotel told him he couldn't check in. And he said, well, why? And they said, because your vehicle was not registered with the hotel and it was in our parking lot the night before. Now, we all know that that's just an excuse. It's not even a very good one. So I called over there and I said, are you the manager? And this young lady says, well, yes, I am the manager. And I said, well, I said, please explain to me why you won't let this, I gave his name, man, check in. And she said, well, because his vehicle, actually, she said, hold on, please. And then she came back a few minutes later and she says, well, the reason is because his vehicle was not registered with the hotel and it was in the parking lot the night before. I said, okay, so that doesn't make a lot of sense. I said, answer me this question. I said, so you're telling me that the hotel isn't going to take his money today and let him check in because his vehicle was in the parking lot the night before? And she said, well, that's all the information I can give you. I said, well, you just answered my question because it's not about that. So I said, what I want to do, I said, is come over there now and check out of my room. But I want you all to give me confirmation that I'm not going to be charged for today because you're not letting one of my group check in. I said, and by doing that, you're forcing my hand to leave. I said, and probably many others are going to be leaving as well. And she said, what?
What's the hotel?
Hold on. So she, Woodfield Inn and Suites. Woodfield Inn and Suites in Marshfield, Wisconsin. So she says to me, she says, well, that's fine. We won't charge you for tonight, even though it's past checkout time. I said, well, thank you. So I went back to the hotel and then David Davis, he went back and he checked out. And then Rob Pugh called and canceled all the rooms he had. They probably lost about maybe 15 customers, paying customers, 15 rooms that night they lost. So on my way out, when I realized that the manager was this young lady that I was speaking to the day before, when I checked it, really nice. She put me on hold because this wasn't her decision. So I said to her, I went in to get a printout to make sure that they weren't going to charge me for the second day. And I said, I leaned over the counter. I said, so this came from higher up, didn't it? And she said, yeah, sorry. So I'll be writing a really nice review this week for Woodfield Inn & Suites, as will many of the people. Thank you, Brother David. As will many of the people that had rooms. And the best thing for Rob Pugh is that he had many rooms, so he can write many reviews. And which I'm actually glad. I'm over to the Hotel Marshfield anyway, because this is where we stayed in March. This is a much nicer hotel. It's brighter. It's up to date. The Woodfield Inn & Suites was kind of, you know, dated, and I'm not going to tear them apart as far as their cleanliness, because it was pretty clean. It was spacious. Had a beautiful pool, hot tub area, although I can't even do the hot tub anymore. You know, video games, all kinds of stuff. So I just said that if it wasn't for, you know, if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for their ignorance of the truth and their obvious pro-abortion stand, then we probably would have all been there this morning as well. So it all worked out for the best, where we are meant to be, and just a little more truth was exposed. Just a little more was exposed. So, you know, I can say, oh, you know what? I think I have something into that plug over there, right there. Just pull that USB out. Sorry, guys. So Woodfield Inn & Suites in Marshfield, Wisconsin is pro-abortion. So I can't say that they're anything else but pro-abortion, because by that they stood, I want to, but I don't need to, because the stand that they took against a pro-life sign says that they are pro-abortion. You know, kind of just like this morning when Coach was doing his show downstairs, and I was running a little late, and I got down there and I heard him talking about how the management came over and asked him to quiet down a little bit because he was being loud, and somebody had complained because he was interrupting their peaceful breakfast, and you know what? From the room where people were eating, you couldn't even hear them because there's TVs going on in there and there's people talking. So they just walked by, heard what he was speaking on, or even maybe they recognized him and they just wanted to silence him. And so they went and complained. But no big deal there. Exactly. They got butthurt, Vinny. So, you know, no big deal there. That happens all the time. But let me tell you guys, last night was phenomenal. I can't tell you what it is, what a blessing it is to see. I love when I'm at abolitionist, pro-life gatherings or events, because I can't tell you what it is, what a blessing it is to see the youth that are so respectful, that are so well trained up in the word, I mean, and that are so mature. So I can't tell you the joy that I get, or the joy that I had last night when these three young men, had to be maybe 16, 14, and 12, maybe, but were more mature than most grown men that I know or come across. But let me tell you, these three young men come up and they, one by one, they looked at my testimonial book, and then the one was here looking through the residue book, and They were looking at the flyer and they're looking at the tracks and looking at the pictures and he looked at me and says, "Hi, my name is Jonah." And his brother said, "Hi, my name is Elijah." No, Jonah, Noah, and Elijah. Jonah, Noah, and Elijah. Praise the Lord. And they were such a blessing. They really were. Just the when you talk and have communication, when you have a dialogue with a that has been trained up correctly, the child makes direct eye contact with you. The child is the first one to extend their hand for a handshake, to introduce themselves or to welcome you. And they even came back to the table and said, "Well, hey, thank you for being here. And we can't wait to hear you speak tomorrow." It was a blessing. It is such a blessing because, see, I never knew children like this. I didn't have peers anywhere near like this. And so then when I grew up with children like that, and even those types of children existed. And it's a blessing and it's an encouragement, and it should be an encouragement to everybody, because not only are there youth that are respectful and being trained up correctly and brought up with some morals and values, but these youth aren't just in it for the moment. They're not just putting on an act. They are truly sold out to Jesus Christ, and it shows in their word, deed, and action. And I wish and pray and hope that most grown men and women that claim to be Christian would take some lessons from some of these youth. Yes.
Question. I read a quote by a Christian, an old church father, and it said, know the spirit of the age so that you can not let it influence you, right? And I guess my question to you is, do you think the spirit of the age is the opposite of respect? I guess disrespect or, right? I mean, what do you think? I don't know.
Can you repeat it, like how you kind of, again?
To me, what is the spirit of the age, and is it disrespect? Or what? That's not the right opposite word, right? But there is a very huge lack of respect in America for everything, right? A lack of respect for God, a lack of respect for sacred things in general, a lack of respect for other people, a lack of respect for, in the name of love. So, are they telling the truth when they talk about love? But love without, what is love?
They don't even know what love is.
Right.
They don't even have an idea of what love is. They think all these people think that love is a warm, fuzzy feeling. They think love is a feeling that you get. It's something that you feel. It's something that comes over you. They don't understand that love is an action. How do we express our love? We express our love by fulfilling God's law. Love is the fulfillment of the law. So God's commands, God's laws. If we follow everything that God gives us and tells us to do, then we're expressing love. But I think the spirit of the age is perversion, is chaos, because along with perversion comes the disrespect, the ignorance, the the rebellion. I mean, isn't that what it really comes down to most of the time anyway, is the rebellion? It's just because we live in this time where it doesn't matter what you say. And I know many people who do this, and not just lost people, not just people in the world, but there are some Christian folks that I know that do the same thing. And I tell you, there's one woman that I know that does it every single time. And sometimes I have actually, and I'm not talking about my mother, but there's a young woman in my life that I know that does it all the time. And what they do is, it doesn't matter what you say, they have to have a better answer, or they have to know they have to say the opposite, just because. Like, if I say to somebody, oh, the sky is a pretty blue, well, it's actually green. And that's what it is. And if I say, well, the word says this, well, it says this, really. If I say if I say that nobody should be involved in Halloween, they'll try to argue how Halloween is, well, trick-or-treating is an opportunity to reach out to the lost. Well, you don't have to go sit in the alley and put a needle in your arm to reach out to the drug users. You don't have to go sit in the bar stool and down a vodka and orange juice to reach the drunks. You don't have to go into a gay bathhouse and grease up to reach out to the homos. So you don't have to go get involved in satanic, demonic activity to reach out to those who do. So the spirit of the age, rebellion. Doesn't that cover everything? Is that contrary, contrite?
David?
Yes, Larry.
I think you've hit on something there. I think Jesus probably said it, and it's recorded twice what he said, two different ways. One place it says, if Jesus said, if they're not for me, they're against me. Another place he said, if they're not against me, they're for me. And although those are two different statements, when you look at them at first, in reality, they both say exactly the same thing, and that is there are two sides, and only two sides.
Exactly.
And the same thing is about what you're saying about people that have to always one-up you or have something to say about whatever you say, no matter what the subject is. They always have to have the last word. See, there's agreement and unity, or there's rebellion.
I totally agree with that, and that's all we see, right? But I wonder how many of us actually try to take a look at the left, take a look at the lost, and see just how much rebellion they have towards one another. They don't have much. It's those that claim they have rebellion against Christians, of course, but there is absolutely no reason that a Christian. See, I used to be, I did, and I used to be one, because I've been through a lot. I've been through a lot in my life, and almost everything that people talk about, I can put input into it because I've experienced it. But one thing I couldn't stand when I was in the world, especially when I was in prison, is telling a story and somebody saying, "Oh yeah, I did that too," And every time somebody says they did something, they would say, me too, I did that. Yep, I did that. Yep, I did that. But I find myself in a situation where almost every single time I hear somebody speaking of a situation or telling a story or a testimony, I automatically have input because I've been through it. When I say I've been there and done that, I really have. But you know how Paul says he learned many times, how he learned. So I learned over the years that you don't always have to be right, even when you're right. You don't always have to give the input, unless of course you feel led by the Spirit, in which case you go ahead, because then it doesn't matter what anybody thinks or feels about what you have to say, because you're going to say it because you were commanded to say it. Basically, you were led to say it. And if the Holy Spirit leads you to do something, the Holy Spirit is the one true living God within you. And if he's leading you to do something, then he's commanding you to do something. So I suggest you go ahead and do it. But that is that spirit of rebellion that we see, and it's all over this world. It's the ignorance, it's the pride. Because see, that's really what all the whole entire LGBT movement comes down to, is pride. That's what that rainbow flag to them represents. It represents pride in their deviant sexual behavior nonetheless, but it still stands for pride. And see, for me, I knew that I was so proud that I could never admit that I was wrong. And I couldn't admit that I was wrong because it would have meant I was rebelling against my own self. And I was too proud to do that. So I would admit that I was miserable. I wouldn't admit that this happened to me or that happened to me. I wouldn't admit that I didn't really feel comfortable doing what I was doing. I wouldn't admit that I felt something within me that said that what I was doing was wrong. Instead of admitting that, I would rather verbally or physically hurt somebody, because that, of course, proves how happy I am, right? So I know that spirit of rebellion. I know that spirit of the age. I know it very well because I lived in it for so long. And so one of the young men that I have contact with said to me, it's really not a choice, David. You know it's not a choice. And see, the only truth in that it's not a choice is that we don't get to choose what the devil comes at us with. We don't get to choose what our temptations are, what our struggle is. We don't get to choose that. But what we do have a choice of is if we're going to feed into it or give into it, or if we are going to resist it, because we have a conscience, that truth that God places in each one of us, that tells us that there's something just not right with it. I never enjoyed being the receiver as in a homosexual sexual act. I never enjoyed anal sex, not being the receiver. Okay. I just never enjoyed it. I didn't get any pleasure out of it. It hurt. But that's because our anus was not made for penetration. We were not created to endure or to be engaging in sex with our back hole. We weren't created to engage in sex with our mouth hole either, nor our ear hole, nor a hole in the wall, or a hole in a stall, or a hole in a tree.
It's all done to escape responsibility, brother. That's what it is.
Nobody is accepting the fact that everything that feels so good to some people is no good at all. If we truly accepted the fact, see, there's so much truth in the fact that we are not meant to be to have anything going in to our backsides, and the truth there is, when I did it, I didn't enjoy it, and it caused problems. But there are so many men that I know that did it for so many years, and now they have colon cancer, they have colostomy bags, they have incontinence, they have no control, they have issues, they have problems. And after my attack, when that emergency room doctor said to me, "Are you engaging in anal sex?" And he said it in such a matter of fact way. Of course, that's when I knew that my attack was not just spiritual, it was physical. But what that told me was, and he said to me, I said, "No, I am not engaging in anal sex, but I have in the past." And he says, "Oh, I can see the past scarring." What? The scars? You mean there's scars inside of me because of my past activity? You mean that engaging in anal sex causes scars inside of me? Wow. Does that mean that engaging in anal sex is not natural? That's exactly what it means. Jared, look up the definition in 1828 for sodomy, and then look it up in the regular dictionary for sodomy in the Merriam-Webster dictionary. A crime against nature, which we say that all the time. So sodomy is a crime against nature. And when we look at the new dictionary, see, usually, and this is something that I don't get, right? Every definition from the 1828 to the new just looks better for the darkness, right? It always promotes the darkness in their view. However, one of the only words that I've come across thus far that the definition gets more detailed and more truthful is the only word that nobody even knows what the definition is. Everybody thinks that sodomy is anal sex. Everyone refers to sodomy as anal sex. Sodomy is a crime against nature. This definition gets better, and nobody still knows what it means. They say, "Oh, it's anal sex." What's a sodomite? A homosexual. Sodomy, anal or oral copulation with a member of the same or opposite sex. Also, copulation with an animal. Why? Why with an animal? Well, because it's a crime against nature, because it's unfruitful, and it crosses a line of God's intended creation, what his intended order for male and female. So anal or oral copulation with a member of the same or opposite sex, that is sodomy. That definition means that everyone who is ever engaged in any type of sexual activity is a sodomite. because anyone who's engaged in any type of sexual activity has crossed from the natural order to at least oral. I know many male-female couples who didn't like the fact that I said sodomy included oral sex. It is a crime against nature. It's unfruitful. See you guys tomorrow. Have a blessed evening. Oh yeah, don't forget, Wisconsin Christian News will be streaming live tonight. And they streamed live last night, but they will be streaming live tonight on their, I guess, through their Facebook page. So if you want to, I'm speaking tonight, Pastor Matt Truella, Coach Dave, and I think Rusty Thomas as well. So join in. I think that it starts about 6 o'clock. Be there. Peace.